Because what we're going to talk about, our curriculum is designed, wow, there's a lot of bullet points on this thing. Our curriculum is designed for high school classrooms. It's written at that reading level. And we'll come back to that here in just a little bit. But it's designed for a high school classroom. It's split into 2 semesters. You can offer either semester rather independently. The first semester is based on blocks. The second semester is based in a typing language of your choice, or if you want to be really brave, your student's choice. Each semester rather has roughly 90 days. It has each semester has roughly 75 days worth of content to give you a little bit of wiggle room in your schedule. And that's if you go through the entire curriculum. We'll come back to that idea as we go as well. Each unit has some supporting documents for you, as well as the student-facing documents. Each lesson typically, particularly once you get past Unit 0, each lesson typically contains a bell ringer, an introduction, which is led by the instructor, some talking points, again, for the instructor, the activity guide, which is the student-facing document, and then most lessons also have quiz and reflection questions at the end of the lesson. Pretty much anything that has a lab where the students work independently, in other words, they're not given the code, will have an exemplar for you as well in the curriculum so that you basically have an answer key. Again, we'll show you all of this here in just a little bit. This is just an overview. Again, there are 2 semesters. The first semester is blocks, and then the second semester is a typing language. We call them JavaScript and Python. You can use either one, or if you're really brave, you can use both. If you want. I would advise against that. I would suggest you pick one for the class that you're running on a given semester. They are rather independent. You can just teach semester 2 if you really want. And we'll talk about that on Friday. But we're going to ground all of you in semester 1 in the blocks version. There are seven units. We started at unit 0 because that's how computers count. So unit 0 is kind of getting off the ground, doing some administrative stuff that you typically do during the first week or 2, and then getting some basics of MakeCode. Again, just a very gentle introduction without getting into too much rigor, so that you can basically kick the tires and make sure that everything is working in your classroom. Just kind of how we structured the first half of today, is to just kind of make sure that everything is working as we have you bounce back and forth between breakout room and main room, and making sure that your microphones are working, and making sure that your speakers or your earbuds are working, that kind of stuff. Unit 1 is where the actual kind of real content, computer science content, starts kicking in. We start, if you've taught computer science before, we don't start with Hello World. We start with an actual project with like things that move on the screen. So we start talking about sprites right away because that just makes sense. And by the end of unit 1, they're already working on events and collisions. So we kind of get you off the ground running pretty quickly. And then we start building on those kind of core skills that you develop in Arcade rather, that you develop in Arcade, and start bringing in more computer science-y stuff starting in unit 2. All right. The last unit, which is unit 6, is the semester project. Again, we'll get to all of these here in a little bit. You'll get to work with a lot of this curriculum over the course of the next 4 days. Semester 2 starts out with a unit 0 again, which is meant to be kind of a revisit of semester 1. So if you're using semester 2 as a standalone, you'll want to spend some more time in unit 0 than we allocate, just so that students can get familiar with the Arcade environment if they haven't seen it before. And then starting in unit 1, you jump right into working with text-based languages, working with either JavaScript or with Python. A typical lesson is paced rather intentionally. The first 5 minutes are for a bell ringer activity. And if a bell ringer activity makes sense in your classroom, then go ahead and use it, right? If you want the students to work on something while you're taking attendance or getting things ready or whatever, if you're accustomed to that routine where you have the first couple of minutes to take care of some administrative stuff, use the bell ringer activity. That's what it's there for. I will say this, they're not necessary. By and large, the bell ringer activities are just meant to kind of get the thought patterns moving and get us kind of pointed in the same direction. But you don't have to use them. You can skip them almost entirely if you don't need them for your class. So if you start class right as the bell starts, go for it. Skip the bell ringer and just jump into the lesson. The bell ringer debrief, if you use it, and then the introduction to the lab that the students are working on, our pacing suggests that you should only be spending 5 to 15 minutes. Each lesson is a little bit different, but the most that you should be talking up front is 15 minutes. The majority of a 55-minute session is spent with the students working with code. Computer science is kind of a different beast in that it's very experiential. The more you work with it, the better you get at it. The more you hear me talk about it, it doesn't really register. So we keep the introductions to the labs very brief, kind of, again, just kind of get some thoughts going about where we're headed, and then you jump in the deep end and you have some fun. Okay, so the majority of the time in your classroom, your students should be working. That's what it's designed for. It also makes it easier for those of you who have never taught computer science before to kind of just introduce the subject and then get out of the way and let your students work. And then you can mentor your students or follow along with your students if you've never done this before, right? Learn along with your students. It's one of the wonderful things about this course is that you get to be vulnerable too. Be a student along with your students and learn together. And then bring them back for the last 5 or 10 minutes, depending on what happened during the lab, and then also what's available to you in the debrief. Give yourself 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the class, kind of to tie some bows on loose ends and answer any questions that happen to come up and that kind of stuff. Give yourself 5 or 10 minutes at the end to debrief. But again, the structure of this course, the majority of it, your students should be working, because that's how you learn this stuff. It's really hard to learn it out of a book. It's really hard to learn it by listening to it. You have to do it. It's the easiest way to learn how to program. As I said, computers start counting with 0. So that's how we numbered our lessons and our units. So the first unit is unit 0, and it's different from the rest of them, which is also why we called it unit 0, because it's a chance to, again, kick the tires and make sure that all of the tech is working, to give yourself a little bit of room and a little bit of time to do some other activities. If, for example, I do know that there are schools where the computers don't even show up for the kids until week 3. So the first 2 weeks, you have to do something else. So we give you some activities that are offline that don't require a computer to give you a chance to do some stuff that's related to the course, but isn't programming and isn't involved with using a computer. 0.1 is basically, here's the syllabus, this is what we're going to do, that kind of stuff. And if you're working in a TEALS classroom, it gives your students a chance to learn about your volunteer instructors. Day 2, lesson 2, is a super fun one. If any of you have taught elementary school, this will look familiar to you. It's the algorithms unit, or the algorithms lesson, where students create a set of instructions for you to follow. And we give you a variety of ideas for topics for your instructions, like making a sandwich or brushing your teeth. There are tons of different ways that you can do this, and you could have each group do the same thing, or you can have each group do something different just to change it up. But the algorithms lesson is super fun, and it gives a chance for you to be silly in front of your students. Lesson 3 is where we have your students jump into arcade with a tutorial. This is the one that we're going to go through in detail here in just a little bit. Lesson 4 is some more exploration in the MakeCode arcade environment. Lesson 5 grounds them in what's called the coordinate system so that they can figure out what numbers go along with positions on the screen. And then lesson 6 is the kind of summative assessment for unit 0, where the students create a collage. And you get some, even with the kind of limited skill set that the students have, by the time they get to lesson 0.6, they've got enough to make some really neat collages, some really neat designs for their summative assessment for unit 0. So that's the overview for unit 0. Again, we'll show you all of the curriculum here in just a little bit. Some things that your students, though, are required to know. They're the same requirements that we gave to you in order to be here. Your students have to be able to read, and they have to be able to read at grade level. Now, that's not a given for any student, for all students, and we know that. So we provide you some mechanisms to kind of help you with students who aren't necessarily reading at grade level. And then we also will be giving you some additional tools throughout the summer to help with those students as well, or with students who are ELL, English language learning students, or if you're planning on teaching this in a middle school setting where the students just don't have high school grade level reading skills yet. We'll show you those tools and techniques as we go. Students do have to have basic computer skills. This is not a computer literacy course, so they have to know how to turn on a computer. They have to know how to open a web browser. They have to know how to follow a link. They have to know how to copy and paste, that kind of stuff. This is not a literacy course. So if they don't have basic computer skills, this is not the course for them. They need to be able to manipulate a computer. Now, they don't have to know how to program a computer. There's no programming experience required for this course, right? But they do have to know how to use a computer at a basic level. Okay? And your students have to be willing to explore. They have to be willing to look at things and try things and see what happens, because that is part of the exploration in this course, is to give them a chance to play on their own, but given those chances, they're expected to be able to do that too. The guiding principle of this course is to let students play. The majority of the course time is spent with your students doing computer science, programming a computer. And that's kind of a challenge sometimes for some instructors to just be willing to take the guardrails off and take the training wheels off and let them go. But that's how the course is designed. Let the students play. And then when they get stuck as a group, we'll talk about that a little bit later, then kind of give them a little bit of nudge to get them going in the right direction. But let the students play. That is the biggest thing. That is the most important skill that they will learn in this course, is to learn how to play and learn how to explore and learn how to put these pieces together on their own. What I don't want you to do with this curriculum is to be beholden to it. I don't want you to get stuck on, I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and I have to do it in order, and I have to do everything. Like, I don't want you to think of this curriculum in that way. And it's a wonderfully liberating way to think about curriculum, because this curriculum is not tied to any other course. You don't need to complete it in order to, say, be successful in AP Java. You don't. So as much as possible, between you and your students, figure out as you go through, like, where the endpoint is going to be. We all do that anyway, right? We know we have a target that we want to hit by the end of the year, the end of the semester, but we always miss. And I don't want you to think any differently about this curriculum. It's meant to be flexible. It's meant to give you enough material that if you wanted to stick to a schedule, you have 75 days worth of material if you want it, but you don't have to. I'll show you the schedule here in a second, but the schedule that we have for this course says that you should spend 1 day per lesson. That's kind of fast. And so if you feel like you need to spend more time kind of introducing your students to Make Code Arcade a little bit more, or you don't have computers for the first week or two, then spend more time in Unit 0 and do some other things. Explore in different ways. Do other activities that perhaps are offline. Right? But, even though the schedule says this should take 6 days, if it doesn't take 6 days, it takes longer or less, then whatever, it's fine. One of the resources that you get in our curriculum is a planning calendar. So here's the planning calendar. You can put in your holidays, and if your school is like the one that I volunteered at this past year, perhaps you have perhaps you don't meet 5 days a week. Perhaps you only meet 2, which is what we did. So you can modify the calendar, and then the calendar spits out a schedule for you for how long each one probably should take according to the schedule, and then what date you end up on.